this corner. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, I actually wrote out my opening address so you can read along with me. This is my first town hall in Lake Helen, and I kind of like the fact that I'm the first one to do it, you know, and I'm the new kid on the block. So I'm probably going to do half of it wrong. If I do, just ignore me, okay? But what our town hall meeting and how they're typically run, I have had other town hall meetings. This is not my first rodeo, but the first in Lake Helen. We're here to present information to the residents. We need to hear your concerns. We need to have real discussions about what do we want? Where do we want to go? What do we want to see Lake Helen look like in 2 years or 5 years? So that's the whole reason that I'm calling my town hall. This meeting also will include topics of local concern, and it can include, it's not just the villas, obviously, it's all of Lake Helen, such as capital projects, any programs that you're looking at, basically, any services, special events, and any key issues that affect residents. I want to make some introductions right now. We have some other commissioners here who have a lot more seniority over me. At the right, we have Commissioner Roger Eckert, who is a current commissioner. We have the mayor, Vernon Burton. We have our new CA, who is currently working with us. He just came on board, and I think you're all going to really be thrilled over this. Also, we have 2 former commissioners at the table. We have Ann Robbins, all of you know her. She's a resident out here. She's worked in the city for years, has had a lot of experience. She's a wealth of knowledge, and I kind of use her as my mentor. And then we also have Kelly Frasta, who has worked on the commission, who has campaigned diligently for the city, and who has volunteered many hours. Additionally, we have other volunteers in the room. We have Sean Apshire. I appreciate the fact that Sean is taking the questions and doing the sign-in sheet for me. That really helps. And we have Nancy Weary in the back, who has worked on a multitude of projects in the city. So if you all could just give them a round of applause. So we're going to go over the town hall rules, my ground rules as I call them. We're going to appreciate and accept diverse options or opinions, and options probably. But opinions, we all think differently, we all want different things, we view things differently, we run on different platforms, we vote for different people, different parties. But if we can come together as a group of people who can have discussions regardless of which party we're in, I would appreciate that tonight, at least in this town hall meeting. Also, we do have a Q&A session, so if you could just leave all of the questions to the end, I would appreciate it. And then I think this is probably one of the most important. If someone's speaking, please let them finish speaking. Don't interrupt. Let's be respectful to whoever's speaking, because we'll all get our turn. So, I do my town hall meetings a little different, so I kind of try to make them light. I want everybody to feel comfortable. So I'm going to ask a question. Who's lived in this city for 50 years or more? you give us a fun fact? You don't have any fun facts? It hasn't been fun for 50 years, huh? Okay.
Yes, seen a lot of changes.
A lot of changes. Okay, well, that's a fun fact, a lot of changes. Anybody else? Maybe 45 years? Miss Ann, you have a fun fact?
Oh, I got so many I could write a book.
You got 3 minutes.
Oh, Lordy. Well, when I started work for the city in 1977, well, we got here in 75, but there was a little sign out by I-4 that says 1,308 residents. And I said, well, we're going to add 3 more, and soon there'll be 4 more, because I was pregnant for Angie. So anyway, we moved in and got all settled in and everything, had the baby, and 11 months later, went to work for the city. So after 29 and a half years, I thought it was time to hang it up. And so one day before I left, I sat down with the water meter reading books, and I counted. In my 29 and a half years, there were 608 houses that were built.
Wow.
And you know, that's not a lot, because a
No.
subdivision today can have that many. But for Little Lake Helen, that was one of my fun facts, to know how many building permits maybe that I had issued. Because back in the late 70s, early 80s, it was nothing for a builder to come in and get 15 building permits in one day. And I stood there at the counter writing them all out, every single one of them. They
Property must have been cheap back then.
Pardon?
Property must have been cheap back then.
Well, they kind of flooded the town with Farmer Home Administration homes, which for, 1,200 square feet was what they had to be minimum. And it was good starter homes for a lot of people. And a lot of people that didn't have a lot of money could get in rather cheaply into a home. Some of them stayed, some of them are still in those homes. Some of them have modified them, but yeah, there's been a lot of changes to Lake Helen in my 48 years.
Same thing that Miss Deanie said. Okay, how about anybody who's been here 30 years? Okay, we got 3. Todd, you want to start off since you're at the front?
Let's see, a fun fact. A fun fact is that, if my memory serves me correctly, Lakeview and New York Avenues are brick lined, and that brick is still there underneath the asphalt.
Wow. Really?
Yes, that's a fun fact.
It is a fun fact.
Are underneath the asphalt right now.
Oh, wow.
It was all brick. I learned that at the museum.
Get your mom. I think she raised her hand. Do you have a fun fact?
No, I never forgot being a girl.
Yeah, that's the truth.
Kids? I know you probably have a lot.
Well, I don't want to take up a lot of time, but Lemon was dirt too.
Lemon was dirt?
Yeah.
Wow. And I thought I grew up in a small community. Jeez. How long has Lake Helen Villas been here?
Roughly since 1970. I don't actually know the date it opened, but Skip's father bought the land, and then he got too elderly, and Skip and Garvey and families continued with the project, and then we bought it in 1980.
Long time. Hope you stay here until I'm gone. Please.
Lynn, I've got another fun fact. When we first moved here, Eddie came down to find a job and find a home, and he came to the villa, and we found out that it was a 55 and older, so we couldn't move here. But we moved into a double wide that was for rent. It was the first double wide that was ever in Lake Helen. So it's kind of ironic that 3 years ago, when he started having poor health, he says, I think it's time to go to the villa. And we've been very happy here.
Living, huh?
Pardon?
Roger?
In the 70s and 80s, the Lake Helen Volunteer Fire Department used to get some of its income by towing the cars that tried the challenge of driving down Purvat when it was a sugar sand road. And we would tow them out and they'd pay us some money to do it.
Oh, did you pocket money?
No, it went into the fire department.
Anybody else? Okay, no? All right, we're good to go then. All right, how many people are here from Zone 1?
Zone 1. Where's Zone 3?
We'll make that done. Okay, there's one. Zone 2? Four?
And Linda,
Yes.
you stopped at 30, I've been here 25.
I'm sorry. You started jumping in. All right, let's go to 25. Let's get that one in.
My mother built the house that I live in now. She built it in 1981. She married into what is known as the Smiley families, which has been here for more than 100 years. I remember when Pravat, I used to come to visit her, and Pravat was a dirt road and it had a fence, because I used to jog. So I would run down to Ohio and I saw this fence in this dirt road. I said, well, this can't be good. So I turned around and ran back. And since then, Pravat is now the highway that we have now. So that's my money back.
Okay, I'm sorry, I stopped at 30. I'm not gonna go to 10. I mean, I've only been here 4 and I got a lot of fun facts I can talk about. Okay, how about Zone 3? You girls are in Zone 3.
Yeah. Betty and
You
Dean.
guys are 3 too. Yeah.
Okay,
Did
good.
you get them?
That's your zone.
Did you get, that's my zone. Did you count me? Yep. Okay, in Zone 4.
Just one.
Okay. All right,
Where is Zone 4, can I ask?
Zone 4 would be
Charlene.
east of Summit Avenue by 1 block, and it goes to the northeast from about the Lake Road.
From Maine and Volusia, isn't it?
okay.
Maine and High, one or the other, I'm not sure.
Northeast sector of the city.
Okay.
And northeast.
Northeast sector of the city. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to talk about the state of the town right now before we get into the questions and answers. I'm going to speak briefly on it, simply because I'm not a long-term resident. What I'm going to speak on is observation. What I've seen in the 4 years that I've lived here, which I spent probably 3 years without leaving the villas, and got out and decided that I would take on this job thanks to Ann and Miss Beanie and Miss Betty. But what I've seen in this town is that there are so many people who want to see it grow. The problem is which direction. We need commercial, obviously. People want that boutique look as well. There's several parks and lakes here. It certainly is a community that has such great potential. I grew up in Sanford. Anybody who's been to Sanford can tell, if you went back years ago, it's absolutely turned beautiful downtown. Also Lake Mary, which we consider Lake Mary just nothing but cow pastures and farmers. Absolutely beautiful. There are ways that we can come together. We have some discussions on how we can blend all the desires and the wants, bring monies into the coffers. Of course, that's not just my decision. We have 5 commissioners, and everything has to come to a vote. But you, the people, have to speak up. I'm thrilled to see the number of people here tonight. I thought I might end up with 2. That was it. And I would have been happy with 2, but, you know, this is much better. We've apparently, from my observation, have been through a lot of CAs. We are a town that we have a CA and not a city manager. We've seen a lot of changes. I've seen a lot of changes in the last year and a half with the way City Hall runs, how business runs. COVID certainly must have had and played a huge part in things that have happened. But I think it's time now that we come together and we decide as a community which way we want to go. And the only way we can do that is for everybody in this town to come forward and speak up. And let's look at the concerns, let's look at what we can do, what we can't do. I may want to do something that is just going to be an impossibility. But then I may want to do something that we can negotiate to yes on for my zone. Same thing with all the other commissioners. But you guys are going to have to go to the commissioners, your commissioners. You need to speak to them. So I hope after tonight and with questions that are coming up, we know there's some concerns. That's what this meeting's about, is the concerns. I don't see the concerns to be insurmountable. I truly don't. I had a boss one time who told me to go take care of a task with the marketing department, and I was an HR director. So I went to marketing, and of course they just knocked me down and said, nope, can't do it. Well, I went back to my boss and said, they told me no, they can't do this. And she said, you better turn your butt around and go back in there and talk them into doing it. So that's where we are today. We've got to present facts. We've got to put up the argument on what's good and what's bad. And she said, don't ever come back to me and say no again. And so I've kind of held on to that thought for many, many years. You can always kind of negotiate yes. Some of us might not get what we want, but we might get something even better. It just depends, but we've got to come together on it. I think right now would be a really good time, since I know some ladies are going out on the town tonight, to start with some of the questions. Some more. Okay. James Daughtery, I think he sent his through the political page.
Facebook, yeah.
Facebook. His question is, let me back up. I may not know the answer to these, so I will fall back on whomever can give an answer, be it from the audience or from my co-parts in crime over here. Why aren't city managers videotaped?
City meetings,
Oh, the city meeting.
sorry.
Why aren't city meetings videotaped any longer and put on city website the next day? Apparently, there's no video on, there is audio, but it may take a few days to get the audio on, and the audio isn't real clear. In the past, I understand that everything was videoed. I think that's a great question. We've got to keep detailed records, not action records, but we are required to keep detailed records, and video and audio is a great way to go. I really don't know what happened, except that obviously the equipment broke that we had, and then I think that we did spend some dollars on a new video and audio system that's up in the chambers.
Just audio, not
Just
video.
audio, not
Yeah.
video.
We used they were using a webcam.
A webcam,
Yeah.
and they didn't go out on YouTube.
Once it moved over to Hopkins Hall, it wasn't recorded any longer. That's how I recorded.
So since we've been having meetings at Hopkins, it's not videoed. We have a new CA. I'm probably gonna have him kind of support some of these questions and what he's seen. He's only been here a week, but I can tell you, he has not stopped at all. I'm even surprised he's here tonight. I would have said, I'm staying home. Let me rest, because Monday's gonna be another day, another week. Right now, Kelly Frasca is doing all of the videoing. You can go out on YouTube. I go out there constantly. In fact, I just did a marathon last week. I started at 11:30 at night and went to 9 o'clock the next morning, looking at all the meetings, just so I could see what had been said in the past, so I could hold it against everybody that I want to. So that's one way you can get to it now. Kelly, when I go out on the site, there's a place that you can subscribe to it, but you,
Yeah, it's, I think it's former city commissioner Kelly Frasca, somewhere in that mix.
well, I can just look up Kelly Frasca
Yeah.
and see it.
You'll find it that way.
Yeah, just look up Kelly Frasca and you can see the meetings. Okay. I hope that answered your question. I'm sure that when Mr. Gleason gets up here, he will, and I'm gonna leave these, Jim, I'm gonna take these cards and turn them this way, and then you can turn them this way if there's something you want to address. Todd Preston, updates on the water meter replacements. What I know about that is that Ricky, water meters have been ordered. I believe some have come in already. They're working on the water meter system. I think there's still, I thought I heard the number about 400. I don't know if it was the 400 that came in. I think that there's still 400 out there, but I'm not quite sure. I will go back and I'll look at Ricky's email because I knew water would come up, and I'll also share that. Well, Jim got it yesterday. It was CC'd to him. So he can talk about the water issue, where we stand, where we are with the tower. That's really interesting on the meters and what's happening with the water tower in Lake Helen. Don LeSueur, what is the job of an administrative assistant and what went wrong with the last one? Well, quite frankly, I think that, in my opinion, and with talking to her, she wasn't feeling real comfortable working in the city, which seems to happen a lot because, you know, people get beat up all the time, no matter what you're doing, which is really unfortunate. But she wanted to move on, so she actually resigned from her job. She was not terminated. She resigned from her job, and she went to Seminole County. And she's now, I think she got a promotion. She's working for the clerk of the court. Is there another part to that? What is the job? Yeah, I need to answer that. What is the job of an administrative assistant? Really, our administrative assistants are the employees that are working in the back office. They're doing the water billing, they're doing the permits and things like that. If you're talking about the deputy city clerk, that's a different job. That person reports to our city administrator. That person will, if they have time, or they may, you know, they actually do, they're in a role of an HR person, so they can farm out whatever work hits their desk too. So it's a collaborative effort, but the city administrator does take care of public records. If you go out on the website, you'll see who's who in the spectrum of things. She, I guess, fills phone calls. She answers emails for the city administrator. That's what I've seen in the past. And I can tell you tonight, I don't know which direction that Mr. Gleason will go in. Just based on what I've seen, he answers his own emails. So that he can explain that. Did that answer the question? What is the status of the mold restoration at City Hall? Okay, a week and a half ago, I received a letter where, and this is from Todd Preston, I'm sorry Todd, I didn't call out your name. I received a letter, as I think all commissioners did, I'm pretty sure they did, that we had a measurement done on the mold. Well, the measurement starts with if the mold outside of the building is higher than the mold on the inside, then we don't have a drastic mold problem. So based on the measurements that I saw, it looks like we don't really have a huge mold problem. But one thing that bothered me about what I was reading was the person who had submitted the measurements had also taken the opinion of another person who had taken the measurements. So that, you know, and I don't know that they spoke to each other. I really don't think they did. So I have a bit of a problem with that. We need to know the truth. That's it. Where are we? But if there is no mold problem, then we need to move on. We need to get the museum back open again. But there again, that will be up to the commission. And the CA. I really don't know that much
How long
about
has
it.
it been closed?
I
didn't know.
really don't know. I think only a few weeks. Yeah.
I just heard of it today for the first time.
Okay.
It's been closed about 3 weeks.
The museum.
The other
The
problem
museum, how long has it been closed?
is it has leaked upstairs for many years. And that roof in the yellow room upstairs over the museum is falling down. So until they fix the upstairs, and then in our closet, some of the ceiling is falling down and there's a lot of stains.
Because of water?
With water, because that building has leaked for quite a few years. We just put a new roof on it, so that's good. But they have got to do some maintenance on that building. So whenever the maintenance is done upstairs and in the museum, we will be allowed to open up the museum again. So that's going to be probably 2 or 3 months, the way I understand from August. This has not come up at the city commissioners meeting or anything. This is hearsay from Lee and Roxanne.
One thing I would like to add is that I got involved in this a little bit a couple of weeks ago because of my concerns regarding our insurance policy. We pay $161,000 a year for our insurance policy. Now that's with a discount. It should be $209 or something like that. But with like a $29,000, $30,000 discount, it's $161. So I have homeowners property casualty background as well. So I asked to look at the policy. Well, I read the policy and it's an excellent policy, which covers mold, it covers debris, it covers everything. So when I questioned the CA about it, I was told that a claim was submitted, which it was. The claim was submitted, but we got a denial letter on it. And then I immediately said, well, I want the denial letter. I want to see what happened. So we got the denial letter, and I'm like, something's not right. The claims adjuster never went on top of the roof to look at the roof. He didn't have a ladder. And then we went and put a new roof on top of it. But the good news is that our representative with FMIT, Mr. Gleason, knows people in high places with our insurance company. So he will be able to talk one-on-one with them in regards to this claim. But they have opened the claim up again. So hopefully, and I've been told by the representative, a few of us were told the other day, the claims adjuster came out, that it does look like it's gonna be a good claim for us. What we get, I don't know, it's gonna have to be rated. But at least if we can get something back by utilizing the insurance that we pay so much money for, that will be a good thing. Todd Preston, you're a nosy little guy. Can the city please focus on creating an economic development plan? I agree with you completely. I think that will be coming up, I'm not quite sure. We know that we don't have too many committees. We don't have a parks committee and parks and playgrounds committee now. There's a lot of things going on. We've been in a state of flux. That's sort of how I started off. You know, we really haven't moved forward. But now we've got someone new in here, and I'm not blowing smoke up him because next week I may not like him. Seriously. But just, I'm impressed with what I've seen in 1 week and what he's got accomplished. I think this is going to be something he's going to be working on, but he can speak more to that than I can. And can we please address the downtown master plan? Todd, you were in that meeting that night that I spoke up and I asked about what can we do, where can we go? And I was told, well, we have a master plan. And I said, I know we do, but when are we going to start working on it? And then the response was, well, it's just visionary. The master plan is just visionary. So, you heard what I heard. I don't know much more.
Can I speak on that?
Absolutely.
It's only visionary because people here who are guiding the city don't have any vision. It's a definite plan. I'd like to point out something. Duke Energy came through here about 7 months ago, did major restorations. They put in new poles and high-tech equipment all over town. In front of the tennis courts, they put in new poles. That's a part of the downtown master plan. That's the core of the master plan is Blake Park. Had the city been on top of their game, they could have had Duke bury that section of power along Ohio Avenue in front of the tennis courts. And I asked about that, and the city administrator said, well, that's out of our control, you know. But you, as a city, give that utility company a franchise to operate here, so you do have control over that. And you could say, anytime you do major improvements of over 50%, you need to bury your utilities. If somebody had told them, that could have been buried. But nobody does anything. They don't do anything. It's like the can's been kicked so far down the road, it's in 2073 already. You know, so there's a plan, but we need somebody to initiate it. You know, and that's all I want to say. It's not visionary. It wasn't visionary. It is a plan. And they should have followed their plan, but they don't follow any plans around here. They should have followed their plan. They should have coordinated with Duke Energy and at least had that section buried. Because we had 1/4 of Blake Park buried.
Well, I can tell you, like I said a while ago, I really spent from 11:30 one night till 9 o'clock the next morning going through commissioners' meetings to see everything that's been put on the back burner to bring it forward. It's time that we start moving forward, in my opinion.
And we should right now because they missed the opportunity on that. Next time somebody comes through and does something, they should be made aware. Duke Energy should be made aware now that we have a downtown master plan, and they're going to be obligated to review it when they do upgrades. So that the next time they do, they'll have a flag and say, oh, we have to coordinate with the city so that we can start this. Because they have the means to bury that electricity. It could have been done.
Okay, good question. Bad management, is that what you said? The sun is going to be shining again. Trust me. Sherry Norris, if a house is vacant for a period of time, 6 to 12 months, and the water box is locked up, is there still a bill, and who is responsible to pay? Well, vacant, meaning that someone is like a snowbird gone home.
Or
and-
die,
Or died.
yeah.
Whomever owns the home. Currently, the way things are scheduled or set with our water bill is that we have a minimum fee, which of course is $84 a quarter. Regardless of whether the box is locked, regardless of whether, and I had this conversation because I've had a conversation with Ms. Levy regarding some of the houses that are being rehabbed out here, and there's no water. There's no water meters, and yet, if we leave and go on vacation, we turn our water off, we still pay the $84 a quarter regardless. So, I think that will probably, it has not come before, into a workshop yet. It hasn't come before the dais for a vote, so I really can't speak on what the outcome of this will be, but just know that
Is it because the water is so, like, they need so much money to keep the water going that they can't afford to do that? When we leave up north in New England, and you shut your water off, all you have is a connect fee and a disconnect fee, and then no bill in between. And you can leave it for 2 years, 3 years if you wanted to. But then when you do come back, you have a connect fee and a disconnect fee.
And I think currently,
Why does this city do what they do? Or is it because they need so much money to keep this water? I know water is like gold, and is that why? Why? Is it, I guess is my question.
the only thing I know is that the water is our main source of revenue, but I don't know why all of these other,
But if it's not being used, it's locked, like the city locks it,
yeah.
which you know.
It's sort of
is
like
not-
going out, buying a glass of wine and getting an empty bottle, that kind of thing. Yeah, I'm with you on that, but I understand because we have to do the same thing.
It's frustrating.
Linda.
It's frustrating for a lot of people.
Back when the city obtained the loan from the SBA for, I think it was the SBA, for the major repairs that they did on the water system, it was a guaranteed amount, and they passed an ordinance or something at that point in time that even if you had the water turned off and you were going on vacation for 6 months or whatever, there would still be an availability, it would be an availability charge. If the water went through your property, then it was available and you would have to pay the minimum.
So it's an availability charge.
Linda?
Can I ask a question?
Also, if you had a well and you decided to build a well and you decided not to disconnect from the line, you get a monthly charge because of the convenience, if you will, to having the connection. And we've actually had people who come in who did not understand why they were getting the bill, explain it to them, and they said, well, take it off. Well, in the case of having a well and you lose power, you have no water. So having the connection of the convenience, you would just go and turn the water back on. So it's a couple ways of looking at it, but it's, I guess the word that I use and Linda was using as well, it's a convenience to be able to have access to it. And as Ann said, when we got the bill, when we built the well, we were actually forbidden to give away water. What does that mean? You go away, you leave your water running, you get a leak, you didn't know it, you come back 6 months later, you got an $800 water bill. You come to the city, so I didn't know my water was leaking, can you help me with that? We were prevented in giving any relief because of that loan. Now somewhere within not too long in the distant future, we'll be able to get rid of that loan because that is an obligation that we are contractually tied to.
So you're saying once the loan is paid off, that your initial, that you might be able to look at it differently then?
The loan is constricting us from doing anything outside of the contractual arrangement, and that loan is getting close to being paid off. So that would change the process of how we, be able to handle that.
When?
I can tell you that once I get to the,
No, and you want to be careful,
yeah.
because you're talking about potentially something
Yeah.
Yeah,
that
thank you,
could
Mayor.
happen. And this wasn't advertised as a public meeting, so you're kind of in an area where you could be talking about future policy, and that needs to be advertised, and the other two commissioners need to be
So
here.
I'm just talking about what it is,
Okay.
which has not anything to do with what may be.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Nye?
And that's what we got in here.
I was curious if you know, going back to what Ms. Deany had said regarding the mold and the situation with the file room, I believe they refer to it, is what is in place to that's where we keep our records and our files for people that don't know, the city's files and records. What is in place to safeguard those records and files during this time?
There again, that has not come to a workshop, and it hasn't come to the dais, so I don't have any answer. I wish I did, but I don't.
When I come up,
You can answer it, okay?
not answer, but I'll just give you.
Lynn,
Okay.
I just wanted to make a correction. You don't have a choice on disconnecting from if you have a well, you still have to pay that convenience charge. It still has to be there. It's not, you can go off of it.
I mean, when the city locks it off with a
Yeah.
lockbox, it's still it's still
That
a fee.
is, yeah. I just wanted to
And
clarify
that's
with
it.
the wells.
It's just interesting I'm from the north, and it's just interesting. I see such a big difference from how they run things that way over here. And I just was trying to understand it. And I think part of it is about that loan that you're talking about.
And there's another one after that one's paid, so it's not going away.
Not going.
Another one coming right behind it.
Yeah. Okay.
Todd, you've asked some questions here that I honestly don't have the answers to. I do have a response from Ricky regarding the maintenance work on the water tower, and I believe, Jim, you got that same email, do you have it with you?
See it, because I was meeting with Scott.
Oh, okay. I've got it,
I'll
I'll pull it up. I've got it, I'll pull it up, and then you can talk on that. So I don't have any answers on that right now. I do know that there's some big things going on. I think it's going to be probably a very good thing for us regarding maintenance, but there's this money involved and everything. Ricky wrote it all down for me, but I will turn that over to the CA. Ron Perrick. Why did the city purchase 2 UTVs at $98,000? I was not on the dais at that time. I know that out here in the villas, we have a couple of Kubotas, which is what was purchased. They're pretty much considered, I think, like a workhorse. But I wasn't on the dais. I didn't get to vote on that and wasn't involved in it. But any questions?
That's right.
I can't answer. Rest assured that you will get an answer on everything that I can't answer tonight.
On the bills to be paid for next commission meeting, it was listed at $98,000 for ATVs, which is basically a four-wheeler.
Yeah, that's.
Somebody did question and say maybe they meant UTV, which is more utility, but still, $49,000 for one. Seems pretty high. I mean, we're not Celebration down in Orlando, we're Lake Helen, and we need to get by with equipment that fits our budget, not Cadillacs. So that's my only concern, is the price is seen outrageous.
I don't know. Ken, do you know how much you pay for your Kubotas out here?
I paid about 25 for one with air conditioning. Wow. And there were about 20 without air conditioning. That was a few years, 3 years ago.
Was it voted on?
Yeah, for the villa?
Yeah, no, not for the city, did they put that up for a bid?
Yeah,
Give you
yes.
one cheapest?
That went to the public, and it was brought up in a public meeting, and the commission voted to approve the purchase of the two.
They didn't shop around, did they?
Along with another piece of equipment.
Well, but they do need vehicles to work with. I mean, what other kind of vehicles did they have to use?
Nothing that I'm aware of. So it would have been manpower. But, I wasn't on the dais. I wasn't a part of that purchasing any of the UTVs. I knew that we have them out here. I see them every day, so, but I really didn't know what they cost until the question came up today. Ron Perry, Woods of Lake Helen, the sidewalk repair. You're asking where do we stand on
Yeah,
that?
I just kind of fill it in.
Yeah.
Rick Mullins went around with the contractor, and they saw all the repairs needed, seeing the city was in charge of the sidewalks, and presented it to the commission. Well, it was tabled at the commission meeting to postpone it. It's not on this next meeting, so like was stated, we kick things down the road. And I don't understand, we got Rick Mullins, who is the manager for maintenance. Let him do his job. Don't involve the commission, the city administrator needs to know, but it was budgeted for sidewalk repair, and Rick sees the need, he should be able to contract and get that work done. Of course, he needs to make sure he bids it out and gets the most reasonable bid. But that's my feeling. Let Rick do his job, let the city administrator do his job. And don't keep on putting it up on, kicking it down the road.
When Mr. Gleason gets up here, I'm pretty sure he's going to tell you what his thoughts are on in the pecking order and who does what, and I think he'll be real happy with it. $50,000. What is that, guard for repairs of West?
Our last city administrator said they were going for a $50,000 grant for the repair for West Michigan, West Kicklighter, which is a dirt road. And they were gonna match it with $50,000 out of our budget. I just was wondering, where is that? Is that gonna kick down the road, or we in process of getting that $50,000? Because that road needs some repair.
I'm glad y'all are bringing this up because most of this stuff I haven't even heard. It hasn't come up in a workshop that I've been involved in, just sitting and watching, as a spectator, or been involved in as a commissioner. So I think it's good that you are asking these questions so our city administrator can get back with you on what his ideas are and what he will be presenting to the commission. Because I had not heard that.
I think Roger has an answer.
Linda,
Yes.
the section of Kickliner over there just before Paulette's property and where they live at, the garbage trucks and delivery trucks and stuff can't get through it most of the time because the road is so loose and soft. And so it was requested that some type of millings or something be put in there and pack it down. So the reason it's gonna cost so much is because they're gonna try to stabilize the underlying area before they put the millings and stuff on top so that it quits getting soft. And it's to be able to allow the garbage trucks, delivery trucks, and the fire trucks and the ambulances to be able to get back and forth along that road.
So they've already got the bid on it then, apparently.
I don't know if they got the bid yet.
Oh, okay. So the 50,000, we're not sure of then. And Todd, I answered your question. If not, I think that Jim is kind of up to date on this. I know he's supposed to have a meeting with Ricky this week. So with that, any other questions before I sit down? I really want y'all to get to hear Jim and his vision, his plans. His background is excellent, by the way. I had to go to a conference, and when we were doing the interviewing, and I went through 5 applicants, and I found Mr. Gleason and one other that I was thrilled with. Well, as you know, you can't count your chickens before they hatch. So I had the 2 picked out, and it turned out that with speaking with Mr. Gleason, with all that he's done, the way he's put money back in the coffers in cities that he's worked for, built the coffers up, actually, I was really excited about that. Instead of watching the money go out the door on everything, we'd like to have some come in and work towards us all being happy little residents. Mr. Gleason?
Thank you. If I talk, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. A little easier sometimes than holding the microphone.
That was me, I think.
That's okay, I turned it off. I'll start just with a few minutes just about myself, okay? So that gives you a little bit of history and idea. If you Google or look up, you're going to hear that I came here from Littleton, New Hampshire, which is a town in northern New Hampshire, about 63 miles from the Canadian border. It's in what's called the White Mountains area, Presidential Mountain Range. That's not where I'm from. That's where I was working for the last 3 years. I moved to Orlando in 1965. My dad was U.S. Air Force, and it was McCoy Air Force Base in Orlando, along with the Naval Training Center. So if you fly in and out of Orlando, your tag is MCO, because that was McCoy. Those initial runways were for the B-52s for the Air Force Base that was here in Orlando. I wasn't born in Orlando. I was born in Lincoln, Nebraska. I went from Lincoln, Nebraska to London, and then London to Orlando. My mother passed away, and my stepmother are both British, UK citizens. In 2019, when I took care of my late mother's estate, I found out that I qualified for citizenship from her. So I hold both U.S. citizenship, because I was born in Lincoln, Nebraska. My dad was U.S. citizen in the Air Force, and I hold a UK citizenship due to my mother and her birth in England. I have quite a bit of relatives on the other side of the pond, as we say. But I grew up in Central Florida, and I know some noting here, some of you all have been here in Lake Helen for a long time, and you've seen the changes. Well, we can all imagine the changes we saw in Orlando. Orlando was a defense community. There were 3 major things that went on. The Air Force Base, the Navy Training Center in the middle of the state, which I never figured that out. You know how you have naval training in the center of the state, not on the coast. And the other was Martin Marietta, and then all the defense companies that fed off of that. So Orlando was a defense community. And then a guy came along with these 2 little ears on his hat, Mickey Mouse. and it changed Orlando, changed it dramatically. I'm probably the only kid who went to high school, and I went to Oak Ridge High School in Orlando, and I think I'm the only one of my friends that didn't work at Disney, you know, at some point in time in growing up. So I may have worked out of state for a few years, but my long-term history has been here in Central Florida. And I'll be honest, all I knew about Lake Helen is that you were the exit before 44, which is where we used to go to the beach. We had Wednesdays, we'd get off early, and we'd all pile up in friends' cars and whatever, and we'd head over to New Smyrna Beach. And then when you had senior skip day, we all headed over to New Smyrna Beach. And then I think we all knew about Casadega, just because of its uniqueness in terms of that area. I will be married 44 years this year to Cheryl. Some people say Mother Teresa. I'm not an easy person to be married to. She's from upstate New York. We met as neighbors. So there's a plaque in the house that says, "Love thy neighbor." And she visited me a few times in Littleton, New Hampshire. And actually all 3 times she was there, the temperature didn't go above 50. So she said to me, "You know, Jim, there's a direct flight from Boston to Orlando. You come home, because I left New York for the cold. I'm not going back." So she considers anything above the Seminole County line too far north. So she teaches high school for West Orange High School in Winter Garden, 9th grade English. She's counting the days. Being a teacher in Florida is not the easiest job. Being a teacher, period, is not the easiest job. But in Florida in particular, she's an English teacher, and she's removed every book from her classroom because she doesn't want a parent to claim that she's got a wrong book. And I'm not getting political. I'm just talking about the teaching environment in terms of that process. We had 2 sons, Patrick and Sean. My oldest son, Patrick, passed away in 2016. He was a graduate of the University of Florida. And my youngest son, Sean, who turned 39 this year, is a graduate from Florida Gulf Coast University down in Fort Myers. He got accepted to every school in Florida but UF. And since he grew up a Gator, and then when his girlfriend went to FSU, I said, "You can go there, but none of Dad's money's going there." Okay? So he chose Fort Myers in terms of his graduation or his college experience. I have 3 grandchildren. One that came with the marriage. A granddaughter is 14. And then 2 through the marriage. Little girl Harper, who's 5, and little boy Landon, who's 7. They're both going on 6 and 8. And one of the biggest pulls on my heart was when I was home in December for Christmas. And Harper, the little 5-year-old, sat next to me, and she said, "Grandpa, this is not your house anymore." I said, "What do you mean it's not my house? It's Granny and Bride's house." She said, "No, it's not your house." She said, "You and Granny aren't married anymore." I said, "Yes, we are. This is my house, and I'm married to Granny. Do you know something I don't? Is somebody been coming to my house I'm not aware of?" Anyway, point is that my son's going through a divorce, and so he's now staying with us, and I think she equated the separation and being out from the home or what have you. And I went back with probably the heaviest heart that I could have had, was thinking that my granddaughter didn't think that Grandpa was going to be around. So I was anxious during that holiday break. The mayor and I were doing some texts and some emails, and he was working with the attorney on getting the contract up. And then after the holidays, we got that done, and then I was able to tell my granddaughter, "Grandpa's coming home." The 3 years I had at Littleton was very interesting. As the young lady said here, at the table, only because they do things different up north. Okay, not right or wrong, but they do things a little different than maybe what we do here in Florida. But it was a fun experience. It was a beautiful place. You all Google in the news or whatever, you'll see there was an incident that went on in reference to some comments that were related to my late son and caused a very difficult work environment. But 3 years ago, I learned to snow ski. And never thought I'd do that at this point in my life. I'm a Floridian. I can water ski, I can waterboard, kneeboard, but never been on snow before. The only advice my wife gave me was don't do a sunny bono. And 2 weeks ago, before I headed back, I flew my son up from here because he was going to drive back with me. And so, week ago Tuesday, took him skiing. Week ago Wednesday, took him snowmobiling. And then on Thursday, we're in the truck for a 20-hour drive from Littleton, New Hampshire to Winter Garden, Florida. And started Monday, 8 o'clock, here in Lake Helen. And I won't say that it would have been nice maybe to have a little breath, a little break in between, but what better way than to hit the ground running? And you've got a busy little place. And I'm going to highlight a few things based on some of the questions that I heard going through. I know there was a comment about, meetings being videoed and sound and what have you, and I know that's done almost as a volunteer basis by Kelly at this point in time. I am going to look into, just in the standpoint that there are services out there. Now keep in mind, there's a price tag to anything we talk about. And so at the end of the process, the board will have to make a decision in terms of what are priorities or what have you. But like the company called Granicus that does the city's webpage, how I first knew about them at the Florida League of Cities, the Florida City County Managers Association, was they actually recorded and televised meetings and put it up on YouTube. In Littleton, their meetings, we had a company. It was about $18,000 a year, but they covered every meeting and would post that up on a YouTube channel, and it would be there the next day. So, not saying that's the answer, but there's some things to look into that might make that accessible and a little more available instead of all of that work being done on someone that's taking their personal time, out of their life and filming a meeting and getting it ready and putting it up there. So that'll be something that when I found out that we had Granicus for the webpage, I'm going to check to see if they still offer that service. If not, I can still check around in terms of what's out there, just to see what that can be. Because the more you can get information out and get the community involved, the easier my job is, because then you're not hearing from a few people, you're hearing from as many as we can. Now, understand, I work for 5. I work for all of you indirectly, but I work for the mayor, I work for Roger, I work for Charlene, I work for Lynn, and I don't work for one of them. I work for the 5 of them. So they speak with one voice, and a 3-2 vote is one voice. So I follow policy based on what the board says. And the 2 gentlemen here, and Lynn knows, in interviewing with me, my office is open. I'm there for information. But if you come in and say, Jim, this is what I want you to do, this is what I want taxpayers' money spent on, this is what I want staff's time spent on, the first question I'm going to ask is, was that on an agenda and was it approved? If it wasn't, then I'm going to tell the commissioner, then let's put it on the next agenda. So when you get 3 votes, hopefully 5, because in most cases you get a majority votes in business. There's a few that may not. Then I get my direction. I don't do very well when 5 people give me 5 different projects and then ask me to go work on them to find out that when you've done all that work on 5, the other 4 didn't care about each one of the others, and then it's a lot of time and money wasted in terms of that. So I very much believe in a system of, yes, whether it's Lynn or the mayor or Roger, sounds like a good idea, but no, you need to put that on an agenda and let's get some direction. So therefore, not only am I hearing from my bosses, they're hearing from their bosses, you all voters, okay? Water meter replacement program, I didn't see Ricky's email on Friday. They've had me booked in meetings almost from, okay, let's see here. All right, I'm gonna, it's a pretty long email, but I'm gonna grab the gist. And I think most of you all know that it all is gonna start with somewhere there has to be a master antenna, which is for the radio read. And, you know, the talk is your old water tower. And I know there may be some folks that are already concerned, like, oh my gosh, the look of the community and what have you. But I will say to you, those discussions will be happening, but that actually could be a good idea, because the company that would put it up and then also would rehab and paint and bring that tower, you know, kind of back into as a symbol, you know, symbolic area that those of you here in Lake Helen have. In addition to that, there are hydro tanks and wells that I guess need to be, you know, put into place. And as Lynn has said, you know, there's a certain number of meters that have been done, but without being able to go through every idea on there, on his email tonight, that'll be an item that we can ask for an update at a meeting and have Ricky actually do a presentation and give an update in reference to what the process is and where we're at. I can tell you when that's done, that is going to be very efficient for the community in two ways. One, you hit a button, everybody's water meter is read, and that information will just transmit right into to City Hall. And so that saves manpower hours. Secondly, it's going to be the accuracy. Because when you have old meters, and over a period of time, meters don't always read. And usually when they fail in the customer's favor. They don't fail in the town's favor. And so having all the meters replaced and getting into that system, while some folks, I'm not saying here in this room, some folks might see a bill or two change because of what their meter was, but then that goes to the fact where then there'll be more revenue potentially being captured to help pay off what are the additional bonds and the debt that they have. In reference to your comment about the availability fee, I know it's a hard one for folks, especially in a community where you might have snowbirds, you know, because they close up their place and they go away. But the whole idea and the concept, and while you see it in most Florida cities, is because whether you're using the water or not, that entire system has to be maintained. It has to be tested, it has to be updated and kept. So it's kind of like you may not use I-4 that often, but your tax dollars are going to keep I-4. I think it's in constant construction. I think it's been in construction since 1965. Since I've been here, I don't think I've ever seen it done. But so think of it in the sense is that, one, even though you may not be using it, that water is there the minute it needs to be turned on. And so there's a certain aspect of that you're paying into an overall system. So I'm not going to get into is it fair or not, and could that policy change, but that's normally why you have the availability fee, is for the fact that everybody is paying into a system that they use, because none of your tax dollars should be going to the water system. 100% of your water fund should be paid for by water fees. If tax dollars are going to that, then we've got a problem in the sense that we're not running it like a business. And that's what your water department is. It's a business, and it needs to run like a business. Does it have to make a ton of a profit? No. But Derbyshire needs to cover every penny of its cost, and hopefully a little more to put in reserves, so when you do repair and maintenance, you have that extra money in terms of that. I won't get into the personnel side of changes that happened at the administration, because one, is not appropriate. It wasn't here and I wasn't in and I got time. I can only tell you that there are 3 people, you know, that work at full time at City Hall, and that is Aaron, Debbie Howe, and Roxanne. Roxanne is the deputy clerk, and that position is to some degree almost a key contact with the city administrator, almost on a daily basis. And that's why, you know, I think what will happen is, right now I'm seeing she gets a lot of emails, and hopefully over time, those will come to me, and I will copy Roxanne on the ones that are relevant to her area in terms of there. And again, I'm not here to say anything negative about Lee or any other city administrator that you've had, because we all have our styles, we all have our baggage, we all got our dings and dents. You know, it's a tough business. You know, most people don't come to City Hall happy. Most people don't call because they're happy, and they don't email because they're happy. So we are in a business where we deal with folks who aren't happy. My philosophy on that is, I answer my own phone. I answer my own emails. And if I'm not in the middle of a meeting with somebody, and one of my bosses where I've committed my time to them or somebody else, if you come into the town offices, city offices, I work for a town, so you're going to have to give me a little while to switch up some acronyms in terms of that. I believe it's important to meet with you. I might not be able to give the answer, but I'm at least going to take 5 minutes to sit down and hear your story, take your name and number, and tell you. I may not know it, but I will look into it, and I'll get back with you. And I will get back with you. And if I tell you I'm going to get back with you tomorrow and I don't have the answer, I'm going to call you tomorrow and say, you know what, I thought I'd have the answer. It's going to take a couple more days, but I'm going to get back to you. So you will never, ever get hold of one of my bosses and say, I didn't hear back from the city administrator. I guarantee you that. That's just the way I do business. I try not to leave at the end of the day without making sure I did that day's emails in terms of there. I did on Friday, because I met with Scott, and I had an appointment to get my tags put back on. I thought I was going to be back to being a true Floridian, and we all know about local government, right? So I get to the tag office, and they tell me, you don't have an appointment. I said, yeah, I did. I made it 3 days ago. And argued, pissed and hawed, and you can do anything with the county in terms of that, so I had to make a new one. So I apologize I didn't get to that email, so I have one first thing Monday morning, and I'm going to get my Florida plate back on, I'll have my Gator plate on, and I'll consider myself a true Floridian again. Mold at City Hall. I know just enough to be dangerous, but I think I'll give you what I think is a synopsis. These are just some numbers that Lee had given me that you know, somewhere, say on the big price tag, it might be $400,000 plus. But as your commissioner had said, the insurance company adjuster was back out this last week, and they didn't do an inspection of the roof. And they made that recommendation to the insurance company, and he had the record of it. So that means FMIT didn't follow that back up with contracting with the contractor to come up and go on the roof. It's probably going to open the door to us for a little leverage on a claim. Now, whether or not that'll open the door for the full mold or not, I don't know. We'll have to see in terms of that report. But one thing you can count on with FMIT, that it's called the Florida Municipal Insurance Trust. They are an entity of the Florida League of Cities. So they're not there to make a profit like State Farm and the other insurance companies that out there. Their job is to insure cities and counties, local governments across the state. So their rates and all are charged based on what you use, your claims and your charges, which are similar to your house, but the difference is they're not making a profit. So they don't deny a claim just because they want to make money and keep it in their pocket. So there's an opportunity when the second review comes back on here. We can take a look at that and see what door it opens. It may open the door to also having them take a look at the mold, saying that could have been caused because you didn't do that inspection. And so we weren't told there was a problem, so we put the roof on. Is it maybe 100%? Probably not, but there could be an opportunity there, a little bit of negotiation back and forth. I happen to have a long-term relationship with the director of FMIT. She's been with the Florida League of Cities a long time. That doesn't mean that she turns around and says, okay, Jim, we're stroking your check for $400,000. But it does help coming back to work in Florida where there are people in places that I've worked with before and at various levels. And so I can pick up a phone and cut through the red tape and get somebody to give me an answer. And we will be able to bring that forward to you. I'm not going to say it's going to be next Thursday's meeting, but we'll get that information out there. And I think it's critical for a guy who came in December and watched your meeting at, is it Hopkins Hall, and then see the chamber you have upstairs and knowing you can't use that. There's nothing more frustrating in the sense that this is a building that we're paying for. It's kind of like your availability fee. Okay? We got a commission chamber that we're paying for, but we can't use. And so we've got to get that fixed, you know, in terms of that process. And I'm going to, I wrote the questions down. I'm going to jump ahead to, it's Karen, right?
Me?
Yeah.
It's Nancy.
Nancy, I'm sorry. Nancy, you talked about the file room. So I'm going to tie that in because I had a review of the file room. And I know that everything's in there and the same issue with mold and what have you. And again, you know, things cost money, but it may be that what needs to happen is to look at potentially hiring a, you know, I say a company or an individual that once we know it's healthy and it's safe to be in there, then all of that gets digitized. It may be a little process, but that's what government's doing. I mean, old paper records aren't the way to go anymore. You know, there's got to be a point in time down the road where you could go online, click on a link, type in a couple of search words, and files and records would come up. And so, yes, you can do public records requests, but you'd be able to get information that you need. So I'm aware of that, and to me, I tie that into the mold problem, because that's part of that issue in terms of that. And so I've already made a mental note that once we I get some breath and feet under me and working with this board and their direction, I know there are some key things that need to be done there to get that open. Economic development. You do have a master plan. You have a downtown plan. Community after community in Florida, because they're required to have it. And I've worked in places and been in communities where they were done 10, 20 years ago, and then they get put on a shelf and they get ignored. Sometimes it's the money. I mean, everything costs in terms of that. You all know Lake Helen is predominantly a residential community, so there are not big parcels of commercial to develop. You've got the piece on the other side of I-4. So in reference to your main town area, there is some limited pockets in terms of there. So you're probably not going to get the big box stores, and you don't want the big box stores. I think the idea, the term is boutique. And I talked with a couple of the council members, just in the sense of not my idea of what the plan should look like. That's what the town's done, is already in terms of there. But it may be putting some tools in place to help fund it. And one is called a CRA. It's a Community Redevelopment Authority. And what it does, it takes an area like your downtown and draws it off and designates it. And it says, let's say the tax rate and the value of that is $1 million today. You put in the CRA, and a year from now, that property or that area is $1,100,000. The $1 million goes into the regular bills that it used to go into, and it takes care of what it used to. That $100,000 goes into a special pot called the CRA fund, and it only can be spent back in that district doing the improvements of what you're looking for economic development. It can be money that actually is loaned or matched with a builder or a landowner to improve their building, to create a facade, whatever it is that we're looking for. So there's some tools out there that are available. But to create a CRA, you have to have a study done that has to find certain conditions that are in place. And then you got to get the county and the school board to agree, because everybody, when the tax dollar goes out of Lake Helen, there's other government entities that gets their piece of that dollar. And so they have to kind of buy into your CRA, because it's giving up money for the schools and it's giving up money for the county. And in terms of that extra $100,000, it's like how, because they're not getting any money off of that. So you have to have a study that puts that in place and validates that it meets the legitimate requirement. I don't know the politics in Volusia. You know, how difficult that is, I don't know how many CRAs there are, but it won't take long to find out and meet the right people and have those conversations. But that's just one tool that can be looked at. But it is time to take a plan off, dust the dust off it, and take a look at it and say, okay, what the heck can we do? And if it's not overnight, what can we do incrementally? I mean, let's start, so people start seeing something happening with the plan. Just a comment on Duke. I mean, I heard that and I appreciate that. And yes, I don't know if there was communication between the city and Duke Energy, but keep in mind, Duke Energy is not required to bury their lines, no matter what Lake Helen says. Lake Helen can ask Duke Energy to bury the lines that go through Lake Helen. But Duke's going to say, this is the cost of us replacing the overhead line, this is going to be the cost of going underground, you pay the difference. So they can underground everything we want. We just have to understand that there is a cost to that. They don't do that free. And we don't regulate them. They're Public Service Commission, and to be honest, I don't even think God has authority over the Public Service Commission when it comes down to the utilities. So you can work with them, and in terms of there, but they're a business. And so if they go underground, long-term is an advantage, absolute. Hurricanes, less lines down, you know, power outages, and what have you. So yes, we need to make sure that we've got that partnership, and we need to make sure that we're working with all the people that have an impact on Lake Helen, and in terms of, so that they're aware of, not in our plans, but then we're aware so that we can say, okay, this is what it's going to cost, do we have the money, and how could we meet that if we needed to, in the terms of like burying lines, which is critical. I'm going to be moving in a couple of weeks here into the village. Kind of an oddity how things have fallen into. I'm going to be renting. I'm going to be renting Lee's place. So I think they call it the city administrator house now. Maybe we'll put a plaque out and not quite the White House, but the city administrator house. Okay.
You have a blue house.
It's
Blue house.
blue.
Blue house. Yeah, blue house. Now, I'm going to be honest, my wife is going to stay in Winter Garden. She teaches 4 miles away at Winter Garden High School, or West Orange High School. So, but it's a lot closer to Littleton, New Hampshire. Okay? And she's already viewed it 2 ways. Since my son's now with her, and the grandkids are at the house 3 out of 4 weekends, there are some weekends she's going to say to them, hey, you guys have the house all to yourself. I'm going to Lake Helen. And there'll be a couple of weekends when she says, you know what? You get yourself out of here. You go to Lake Helen to see Grandpa, because Grandpa's got the house person. So it's going to work out, and it's about a 50-mile drive. I mean, I did this last week. It was about 550 miles on my truck from Monday through Friday, and I'm not used to that. In Littleton, I was less than 1/8 of a mile from the town hall. So other than the depth of the snow, or depending on the temperature, I could walk to work. And to be honest, I'm looking forward to that, because right now I'm getting up at 5:30 in the morning when Cheryl gets up, because she has to be at the high school. So I said, you know what? This is costing me about 1.5 hours of sleep. So I'm just as anxious to get here. And probably as she is, because think about it, going on 44 years with me, and she's been able to say he's been up there for 3.5 years, and I only have to see him 5 times a year. Hell, she's got the best marriage going, right? I think I answered the thing on the vacant house or whatever. You know, that it is tied to bonds and loans, and that availability fee is just it's the cost of doing business. So that when you do turn it on, it's there. And the house is vacant. It's either being charged to the owner if they're not there, an estate, or a bank. You know, if it goes into foreclosure, there's going to be a lien. You know, in terms of that. So one way or the other, the city will get their availability fee, you know, in terms of that process. Let's see here. Sidewalks. I had a good meeting last week about sidewalks, and I'm not going to say I have the answer tonight, but I do know about the sidewalks in your neighborhood. And what I'd asked Ricky, and hopefully it's not going to take a lot of time, but I said, what you should have is a master sidewalk plan. You should be able to produce a report that we can provide the mayor and the commission that shows the condition of every sidewalk in the city of Lake Helen. Not only the condition, but the areas that don't have sidewalks that need them. So when you've got that list and that plan, then you can come up with the cost. Okay, I'm just going to pull a number out of the air. Let's just say if we want to do everything overnight, it's $1 million. Well, we know we don't have $1 million, and folks don't want to pay $1 million in extra taxes right away. But what you do then is called CIP, Capital Improvement Plan. You break it into 5-year increments, and you list the neighborhood and the areas that you're doing these number of sidewalks in 2025. This next section, 2026. This next section, 2027. And ideally, they're rated based on worst to the least, not on who makes the most noise or the squeaky wheel makes the grease. Now, I also recognize I work for folks who get elected. So it's not uncommon to make sure that there are at least a couple of projects in every zone. That's fairness in reference to the commissioners. But there's a point in time where you have to really look at it and say, and I have no idea, sir, about the conditions, so I don't take that in the wrong way. So in terms of that, but you want to look at it not politically but factually. Where is the problem? What's it going to cost us? And then what plan do we have in place to fix it? My job then is to work with staff and to get that plan before the board. And that's the same with on roads and any other item, and even equipment and police cars. They all should be on a capital improvement plan, so you know. A police car, I don't know in Lake Helen, in Littleton, 6,000 population, with the winter and salt and all that gets on the road, they're replaced every 4 years. So just say on a thought cycle sense, so you sit down, and once you've got a plan in place, there's no surprises. You're already budgeting and planning for it. You know what it's going to cost, so there's no spike in the tax rate because you already have sat down and said, we know these things are coming up, they need to get replaced. That said, there's always emergencies. And there's always something that can happen that jumps one project ahead of another, and that's just the reality in our own homes. We may be planning to replace our AC system, and all of a sudden we have a roof problem. So there's some flexibility, in reference to that process. I will sometimes use the word manager, so please. That's part of the vocabulary that I get used to, is because most positions in Florida are city manager. The duties are 99% the same, except here in Lake Helen. The mayor and council makes the approval of hires and terminations. In traditional city manager government, they have one employee. That's me. I'm the person they hire and fire. If they're unhappy with somebody else, they let me know it, and it's either my job to fix it, or they fix it by fixing me. Okay? But I recognize this is a different model. But that's the key difference. Other than that, a city manager and city administrator, my job is the same in the sense of the day-to-day nuts and bolts of doing government. I've been a city manager for 24 years. I didn't come in it until maybe about 40. Prior to that, I was in the private sector. So I have just as many years in the private sector as I do in the public sector. So I like to think of it in the sense of Lake Helen is a business. It's a corporation. Your general fund is $3.6 million. Your total fund is $4.7 million. When you count your water and your other enterprise funds. So think about that. You're a $5 million corporation to round out the number. And your commissioners are the board of directors. And then they hire the CEO to run the day-to-day of your company. And I come to it with that mindset. I've owned my own business. I've had to make payroll where other people got paid before I did. And so, fiscally, I'm conservative. We're going to spend one of your dollars. It's going to be because we've looked at every alternative and every chance that we can. And the board's going to be well aware. They make those decisions, but they're going to know that we've done our homework. I'm not a big believer in fat in the budget. You always need a little room for what's called a contingency. Just a small amount of money set aside, just that unforeseen emergency. And that's not your city reserves. That's a little bit you build into the annual budget. And I'll inherit a budget this year, but I'll have my hands in being able to work with you all and the board on the budget for the October 24 to September of 25. So there may be some things in there this year that have already been approved and set, and so the restraints, might be there, and I might not have some chances to change. I'm a big believer in transparency. There is nothing to hide. Okay? Nothing. Any record, any budget, information under Florida law says you have a right to see it and you have a right to have access to it. Now, if you want copies and whatever, there are laws in terms of that and staff time and what have you, but I understand. Florida was the model for the country when they did what was called government in the sunshine. And that just means no backroom deals, no side deals. Jim won't be making a side deal with anybody, okay? I may talk with a developer or a different group and say, hey, that's a great idea, and you know what? We'll take that before the board, but you got no handshake deals with anybody or no wink winks. Because I've got 3 of the 5 bosses here. It takes 3 of 5 to say, yeah, Jim, that's what we want to go, and that's what we want to do on it. And that's how I operate. The guy you meet here tonight is going to be the same guy you're going to meet in 6 months. You're going to meet a year from now. I don't change. I am who I am. There's no reason, that there's any secrets in what we do. Now, personnel and things like that, there's things that aren't necessarily the day-to-day responsibility for folks. So, I'm not going to say that people have a right to come in and just grab personnel files and issues in terms of there's some HIPAA and privacy laws in terms of that, but in reference to the day-to-day operation of your government, there is nothing you can't ask, you can't email, or you can't call about. And I will get back with you. If I don't know an answer, I'm not going to BS you. I'm going to tell you and I'm going to tell the board. I don't know that. But you know what? I damn sure when I get to the office tomorrow, I'll start asking, and I'll eventually know who to call and how far it needs to go, whether it's in Volusia County, whether it's in Tallahassee, or is it in the water district, whatever it is. I'm not intimidated and I'm not afraid to ask whoever. I'll just give you a quick little story. New Hampshire's first in the country with primaries, right? It's non-political now, so I'm not picking parties or anything. But the week before the primary, 2 candidates came to Littleton. Ambassador Haley, the Republican, and Dean Phillips, who's a congressman from Minnesota, who's running against Biden. Probably has very little chance just because of the primary system and what have you, so I'm not here to talk about the party or what have you. But the governor's office contacted me and said, Jim, we'd like you to welcome Ambassador Haley to Littleton. So I'm coming out of my office on Main Street and almost run into a guy, knock him over, and I look at him and say, oh my God, Congressman, how are you doing? And I said, Mr. Phillips, and he said, yes. And I said, I'm Jim Gleason. I said, I'm going to be introducing you in about 30 minutes, or welcoming you to Littleton. So I said, I'm going down the road to see the governor, Ambassador Haley. And he said, would you tell him I said hi? And I said, I will, but I'm not sure they'll get back to me, okay? In terms of all aspects. So when that's over, and that little clip made NBC News, and I'm welcoming her to Littleton. I've worked with the governor of New Hampshire. I've worked with the senators in New Hampshire. I've worked with, not Mr. DeSantis, but I've worked with governors here in Florida. I've worked with our state legislature, and I've worked with our House members and our Senate members. I don't see blue or red. When it comes to my job, I see green. Do you have grants? Do you have money? Can you fund a project? Can you help me with a project? I don't care if you're conservative or liberal. I don't care what part of the aisle you're on, because you know what? Those issues don't happen in Lake Helen. We don't have to debate and vote on gun control and abortion and those hot button issues. I mean, we all have our views, but I don't need any of that for running day to day. Is pothole political? It's Latin attire, both Democrat and Republican, right? And conservative and liberal. So, but I'd like to think that on our end, we deal with those things that are, let Washington and Tallahassee play the politics. Let's focus on making this the best run, the most efficient, and the most cost-effective community that we can have. And I recognize there's only so much pie every year, and there's never, ever going to be enough money to do everything. But if the board trusts me and we work together, and you all learn to trust me, I think you'll see progress. And I think you'll see things get done, and I think you'll see things that weren't done get caught up, and maybe some of those things may change, just in terms of into how that aspect is. So with that said and done, I'm very fortunate to have gotten this position. I appreciate the support of the mayor and the commission, and while I didn't get my vacation in before I got started, but you know what, I told my wife, I said, what better thing? Because if I'd had a couple of weeks off and it hit 80, I'd have been by the pool with a margarita. In fact, Lynn told me there's going to be margaritas here tonight. That's what so already got suckered, all right? So on that note, any question, anything you want to ask me, anything that maybe I didn't cover, anything? Yes, sir.
I just had 3 quick comments. I want to speak about the recordings. I'm pleased to hear what you have to say about recording the commission meetings. Kelly Frasker records those, but she's a private citizen, so she has selective choice, you know, whether those get posted or not. She posts those, but it's not, shouldn't be left up to a private citizen to do that. You know,
yeah, that's not the official city recording, but what she does is a benefit because it's not. But I understand what you're saying. I understand what you're saying.
So the city, I believe that the city needs to, the commission needs to address and establish a policy, whether the ordinance or not, put out a clear outline of what you're going to do about recording and putting those meetings out in the public, and then make them available without people having to ask for them. The second thing is the mold issues. We need clear direction on developing an action plan for the mold and the construction restoration. Fine, we may get something from the insurance company, that's fine, but let's get it going. 2 years ago, it was $200,000. They threw that ballpark out there for the mold. 2 years down the road, the can came, now it's $400,000. By the time anybody does anything, it's going to be $600,000. Just get it fixed. Whether the insurance company pays for it, we pay for it, volunteers, I don't care. Just get it rolling. We need an action plan and put it in place. You know, is it mold or isn't mold? Should we use it or shouldn't we? We need a clear plan. You know, it should come from you and the commission. The third thing is economic development. I'm very pleased about your background, and I just want to say the city's paid for 2 economic development plans. The University of Central Florida did an extensive one in 2014. It's about 90 pages long. It's clear. It was a plan. Didn't do anything with it. There was another study done in 2016. That plan's available. There was one done in 2018, and we did the downtown master plan. There is a clear vision of what we want. Nobody will get the ball rolling on it. So we need to do that. And that's it. The primary problem is the city doesn't have any vision on economic development. We need somebody to give them some vision, put some glasses on so they can see, you know, the future.
Let me address that for you, because I remember you asking me a question at the interview. Jim can have all the ideas he wants, okay? I'm living in Winter Garden right now, and 20 years ago, Winter Garden would have been called Winter Garbage. Their downtown was dead, was vacant. The West Orange Trail, which is now a statewide system, got funded. I'm just using that as an example. Goes right through the heart of downtown Winter Garden, and it divides my neighborhood, which is a brand new neighborhood that of almost 700 homes on either side of that trail. I could ride my golf cart into downtown Winter Garden because of the restaurants, the coffee shops, and the theater and all of that started with that trail. So there's a starting point. But I can come in and say this is what it should be, but I also got to recognize this is Lake Helen. There's a historic history here. And there's a way that people want it to look. So it may not be Winter Garden. You know, it may not be downtown Sanford. But based on those plans and working with this board, we pull out what that vision is and at least try to get what economic we can get here. Because if we can get some of those parcels developed, every commercial retail that comes in takes a little burden off of you, the taxpayer. Because they don't get exemptions, they don't get homestead, they don't get over 65, they don't get veteran or what have you. They pay the same rate out, so it helps diversify your tax rate. Because right now, this is a community that is about 99% dependent on the residential property tax is probably half your income source, and then the other through sales tax and other fees that come from the state. So, yeah, I get it. You want to be diversified, but it can't be Jim's vision. It's got to be everybody in this room's vision and the 5 people that I work for. Now, if we get that, I know how to get the bus moving, okay? But I don't want anybody to think I'm here to push my idea or my vision on anybody, because, listen, I want all the commercial there is, you know what? Because they pay the bucks. And yeah, I'm used to, like I said, you know, tonight I thought I was coming here for margaritas, but no, I'd have been on my golf cart for the first weekend, because it was too cold last weekend, and my wife and I would have been downtown Winter Garden having dinner and a drink, and you know, the theater's been redone and whatever down there, so I know exactly what you're talking about, but you also balance that with the historic concept of the homes and the nature of what Lake Helen is. So we just got to come up with that fine balance, but once we pull them out and dust them off and get everybody to agree on this is the vision, then I have no problem starting the engine and stepping on the gas, okay?
So, I just want to clarify what I say, and I've been harping on for years, economic development. You know, I'm not necessarily pushing the engine for commercial, but those businesses that come in here properly chosen, they vitalize the city. There's no vitalization rate.
Absolutely.
That's when I say economic development, that's what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
I'm looking for boutique, vitalization, whatever.
Yeah.
You know, people want to come here and enjoy a music store, you know, or a restaurant. We don't have any of that stuff, you know, and nobody's pushing for it. You know, nothing to support the people to keep them here or to bring people here. It's starting to change a little bit, but it's very slow. It needs to be more clear.
One of my best friends is a guy named Joe Weinkoop. He's the mayor of Mount Vernon. Lake Helen is a lot like Mount Vernon. Very much residential. They have a pizza place in town, and they have a couple of fast stops, like a Circle K. Now, in Mount Vernon, if we were talking those kinds of things, I'd get run out of town, because they're okay to say, we only got to drive 10 minutes, and all of that's up on Colonial. We can go east or west to Claremont or Winter Garden, there's everything we want, and it's outside our city limits or town limits. And they're okay with that. So what I'm getting at, that's where I come to that balance, in the sense that, yes, it doesn't mean bringing in a massive shopping center and big boxes. It could be boutiques and mom and pop owned and what have you, but you also want them to look a certain way. You want them to add a certain vibrance to that. And it does revitalize, because once they start, it encourages the neighbor to do something with their property. So no, you've got a key point there, sir. All right, anything else? Yes, ma'am.
I'd like to talk a little bit about that. When I moved here in 2018 and 2019, the city budget was $1.9 million. Within 2 years, it more than doubled. We didn't really see that was from residential. That was from our area filling out, you know, and those properties bringing that revenue in. What I see as a resident is just not, our money isn't well spent. It's not being allocated properly. So I'm not opposed to commercial growth, but I do think maybe we should reevaluate an economic development plan if we have one that's 5 years old or 7 years old, and kind of see where we are. Do we want to really grow? I mean, most of these people stay here because they love the fill, like Mount Vernon, or they moved here for that field. So we need to really have an open and honest discussion. We talk about bringing in commercial and the revenue that that could possibly bring. Oftentimes it doesn't bring in that commercial revenue that we want, maybe for 10, 15 years down the road. So I certainly hope that we can have more discussions on that. Another thing I'd like to ask you to look into is the stormwater. This year was the first year we've had a stormwater, well, we had a big hike in our stormwater assessment. And some of us live in an area called the Woods we are the only place in the city that has our own stormwater. So we pay our dues currently. Do you know this story?
Yeah.
Okay, so we were told we would get some sort of credit because we automatically had to pay with our taxes for the assessment, but yet we heard nothing. We have, it's crickets.
If I could address that two ways. First of all, stormwater has been a pain for a lot of people in Florida because they call it a rain tax. That's what it's referred to. I was a city commissioner, so at one point I was on their side of the aisle, and I work on the other side now. Ocoee was one of the first cities to put in stormwater, and we almost all got run up a rail and hung up on a tree and what have you in the terms of that aspect, because it said you're charging me for a rain tax. I understand what you're saying about your neighborhood and that you have retention, but stormwater is like the availability fee. It goes into a fund that is supposed to benefit the entire city. And that may not necessarily benefit you because you got those ponds, but that's why that fee gets assessed out there. Now, I know there is an issue in reference to whether or not there's a rebate or not, and I think that's going to probably come down to a legal issue because within the ordinance that is currently written, I don't think it allows for it. So there's going to have to be some discussion in terms of that. But I am aware of your situation, and I'm not at all minimizing it because, again, it's been a week, so I need to get further into the weeds, but I've got enough thrown at me to be aware of the stormwater and the sidewalks and in terms of that process. And I know it's difficult for some folks because I live in a neighborhood that the developer, you know, I don't know how many parks and retention ponds that there are, but I still pay a stormwater fee to the city of Winter Garden, and yet my HOA dues are $2,000 a year. So I understand.
Well, and we've also recently had the city cut into without permission
I heard that.
to our ponds.
I heard that.
So I think that's a legal issue.
Yeah, yes it is. And to be honest, that I'm going to tell you, I don't know what the circumstances were. Should never been on private property unless there was some emergency and there had been an agreement between the HOA and the city.
They are funneling the city's water into our retention ponds now.
Okay. All right. But I'm aware of that, okay?
Thank you.
All right. Anybody else?
Can I just follow up on that question? I got a question for you, or the commission. If we are paying that extra dues and we have an issue with our stormwater, plug pipe, does the city have a responsibility to help clean it? It'd be ours, okay?
It's yours.
Right.
It all depends on the covenant and restrictions.
Okay.
When a neighborhood gets turned over to a city or a town, like for example, if you were gated, the sidewalks and the streets and everything would be yours. That typically makes that definition. So there's you wanted it gated, so that's 100% yours. You're not gated, so those are public streets. So therefore, if a street needs repair in terms of that, but the stormwater ponds are owned by the HOA as an entity, and so therefore, as an entity, they're responsible. Now, is that saying they don't have a case on why the city went in and is dumping city water or whatever in there? I mean, I don't want to create a lawsuit, and I'm not a JD, but I do recognize what you're saying there, okay?
Do you realize that it's not just retention, we actually have stormwater system. We have the drainage. Yeah,
your drainage pipes and your, everything, it's easy to identify the open areas, but there's the pipes and all that, get it to there, and overflow valves and whatever. I mean, I get into that context, and so that in itself would be paid for by the HOA. So in a sense, you are double taxed.
Well, we're triple taxed, at least. Yeah.
But meaning that, but you just like if you didn't use the water, you're still going to pay the availability. You will get a stormwater fee, but we do have to figure out what went wrong there and how to fix that. Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Good luck for you.
Thank you, Jim. I want to thank the commissioners, former commissioners, for coming out tonight. Sean, thank you for helping me. I know some of you are missing your night out right now, but I really appreciate you staying. I hope that this was informative. You all know where I live. Of course, I'm on the phone half the time, and 4 or 5 people are on my porch half the time. But your commission is here for you. Just call them, call your commissioners, call them and call them and call them.
Okay.
Thank you.
I want to say while he's handing out his business cards, that next week I will be having to go to some classes. I believe Mr. Gleason will be too, so there'll be a couple of days that we won't be available. I don't know what the other commissioners have, but you can contact him. I hope you enjoyed this evening. I hope that you would like to let's do this again, because I'm sure there'll be other things that we can bring up and talk about as the months go on. We're kind of a unique community in the commissioner and the city administrator. The only thing I ask is that I know that Jim is really interested in pickleball.
I got you.
Really wants to get involved.
There you go.
And they know that we've got a big pickleball thing going on out here. I don't do that, I fall on my face. He's also really happy that the pool is heated. And I'm, use my language, but you all know I like 4-letter words too. So Jim told me that he discussed with his wife about this beautiful heated pool that we've got in the jacuzzi. And she said, well, I know exactly where your ass is going to be every day.
After 4:30, not during the morning.
After 4:30. Well, you can go up.
You learn a lot at the pool.
You can go at 6 in the morning, I'm not quite sure. So anyway, a lot of conversations I think still need to go on. There's a lot of topics that we still need to discuss. I want you to all please think about joining us in the commission meetings. A lot's heard, a lot said. There's some angry conversations sometimes, and then, well, I haven't ever seen a kissy commission meeting yet, but it gets intense, but at least it's a learning experience. And it puts us on a route to where maybe we can pull ourselves together and at least doing this community. What I view this as a beautiful community, and I think you all do too, or we wouldn't be living here. And with that, I'm just going to say good night. Kent, thank you so much.
Thank you.
You can go back and I can't believe you were here. I'll let the boss know you do show.
Thank you, Lynn, for putting this on.
Yes, thank you, Lynn.
Great.